Kathy Keller are back with us. The Kellers, they started way back in New York City, where they founded Redeemer Presbyterian Church, 1989. Their three young sons as well, in a decidedly, you can imagine what it'd be like to start a church in New York, New York. Bestsellers for many, many years as well. Tim's newest book is called Forgive, Why Should I? How Can I? And I believe that we have, Tim, are you with us? We have Kath.
I think you got Kathy, but you haven't got Tim yet.
We're efforting for Tim. But Kath, how you doing?
Yeah. It's been a wild ride. We've had some adventures since the last time we talked to you.
Okay. Can you tell us about some of them, Kath?
Well, mainly they've been medical, and they've been adjunct to Tim's health issues. We were supposed to be talking to you in December, if I'm not remembering that wrong, and instead he was taken to the hospital with a bleeding ulcer, and they've been treating that for about 2 months and coming off of the meds for the ulcer so he can have a repeat endoscopic ultrasound. Has been a bumpy ride, and right now he's pretty much just eating clear liquids. And, that's just not fun for day after day. One day maybe, but not for day after day. So,
right. So Tim,
and he also had hand surgery on trigger finger, so the stitches on that came out. So these are all just little gadfly things on the periphery. But
right.
Sorry about this. Sorry about this organ recital.
Yeah, sorry about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So clear
when
liquids.
You're old, you ask how you're doing, and unfortunately, there's way too many things to tell.
Yeah, that's
but
part
yeah,
of it.
we're doing fine, but would be happy to have people praying for all of these adjacent issues, because the big news is the last time we were down at the NIH, they looked at Tim and they said, "You have responded spectacularly to the immunotherapy." That was the word.
Isn't that
wonderful? Well, wait. There's a part B. 100% of the initial tumors have gone, but cancer is sneaky. We had identified a gene, and we had engineered the white blood cells to go after that genetic flag. And now they're cropping up tumors that don't have that genetic flag, so our white blood cells go right past it, don't notice. We're going to have to do the whole thing over again. So we're looking at another month down at the NIH while they do the whole thing all over again with a different set of cells looking for a different genetic marker. And we're just praying that Tim will be in good enough physical condition that they'll do it. But that's where all of this little niggly stuff is, and when maybe a little more serious.
When would that second trip down to the NIH happen?
Well, they're not giving us an actual date. It'll be sometime mid-March to mid-April, which makes it really hard to rent a place to stay when you don't know what your dates are. Looking at Airbnbs and that sort of thing, which we've never had to do in the past, because there was a very generous woman lending her apartment to us, but she's going to actually be in it, so that won't work. But anyway, so Tim needs to have all these minor things behind him in the rearview mirror so that they don't interfere with going down for the new set of cells. And they said they really expect, because he responded so spectacularly the first time, they really expect this to be wonderful, that this will be a really wonderful response as well. So if anybody has any room on their prayer list, getting Tim down to that second set of cells and getting him through it and having them work would be the thing that we're praying for anyway.
Fabulous. We'll certainly put that on our prayer list and pray for Tim and Kathy. But Tim, at this point, and I'm sure Kath as well, you think about this a lot. Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired?
I'm actually, partly because I'm a little bit of a productivity junkie. I really have had to spiritually surrender. I always was a bit of a control freak of my schedule. I was very careful to make sure there weren't interruptions or, unlooked for events that got in the way of my deadlines and all that. Put it this way, I have given up on that. So on the one hand, I'm tired of being sick and going to doctors, but it was also a really good. God just led me to take my hands off my life and say, Lord, you know how much time I'm going to have to work and write and do things this month, and you're not going to give me less time than I need, and therefore I just need to stop thinking that I'm not in charge of my schedule, you know. So I feel like, that week I'm going to get a lot of work done, and suddenly, no, you're going for 2 days for this or that treatment, and so that's the sort of thing that has actually been good for me spiritually. So yeah, I'm emotionally kind of tired of it. Sure, of course.
Yeah. And so, Kathy, you're the gatekeeper, of course, right? Has your due diligence had to increase over this continued illness that Tim is suffering through?
Yeah, absolutely. He scared us to death in December and gave everybody a case of PTSD, ride to the hospital in an ambulance and all the rest of that. So it's been, I tell, what echolocation is?
Yep.
It's what bats do.
Sure.
Beep, 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 to know, to get the radar back so they know where they are. We don't live in a very big apartment. We live in a really kind of small apartment by anybody's normal standards. I'll go through the house calling, Tim, and he'll say, what do you need? And I'll say, it's just echolocation. I'm just trying to find out where you are, and then you're still here. I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you talking. I didn't hear you moving. Just make a noise, so I know you're fine.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. That makes sense, right?
Oh, you guys.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the two-sided coin, Tim, because, you don't have the kind of writing output that you have had over these decades if you don't have your schedule as regimented as you've had it. But then at the same time, it can go too far. With all of us, it's hard to find a good balance there.
Yes, it is. Yes,
that may
Kevin.
change soon. We're going to start mining some of Tim's leadership training things for, courses he's taught and.
Well, now you're opening. That's a long story.
That's a long story, and I'm not going to make it a long story. But we've been working on finding ways to get some of Tim's curriculum and his courses and things like that out there, and they're 9/10 written, so it could be a 2-book-a-year thing that's
John
happening.
and Kathy, what she's talking about, what Kathy's talking about, my Kathy's talking about, is that what we're trying to do is I've been trying to do an inventory of all of my material. I've done a lot of teaching over the years. It's an awful lot of stuff in my files.
This is where your productivity has turned around and bitten you because
over the years I have an awful lot of unpublished stuff. And what I'm doing is I'm inventorying it so that I'm not the only person who knows where everything is.
Sure. And
who could actually pick a lot of this stuff up and get it out the door if I'm not in the best health or if I'm not here. Mm-hmm. So we're actually in a way trying to deal with that, with the fact that my most productive years are behind me, but on the other hand, maybe it would be much better if it was more of a team effort anyway.
Right. Okay, now you just released a book here, 2 months ago, but wait.
Yep, Forgive.
So you're saying, Kath, you're letting this out, this number, 57,000 documents. Those go back, to the 60s, Tim?
Actually, well, no. Those are electronic documents.
34 years whenever we started having
computers. Those go back into the early 80s. They go back in the early 80s. I actually do have 1,500 sermons I wrote in Hopewell, Virginia from 75 to 84 that are all they're handwritten, but they're here too. So anyway, I don't know. We'll see. I'm just trying to make sure that my heirs and my sons and all that know where everything is and where
things are in order.
Where the stuff is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we just want to say out loud that we're happy you're here now, right? We don't need to just know you through your documents. We're glad to actually be talking to you. Yeah. Tim Keller's on the air with his wife, Kathy Keller. Tim's newest book is called Forgive, Why Should I and How Can I? You guys, I think what we'll do is we'll take a break now. And then when we come back, we want to talk to you both, particularly you, Tim, based on your Atlantic article, about American Christianity and if it's due for a revival, if it's possible, and if so, what would that look like? So stay close, you guys. We'll be right back.
revival.
Reverse mortgages. Perceptually, those words were kind of bad words for a while. And still today, in many cases, it's not the perfect fit. But without a doubt, today's reverse mortgage program, now insured by the federal government, is night and day different from that of old. If you or someone you love is over the age of 62 and can't afford to retire, today's reverse mortgage program can be life-changing. This new option does not require you to give up ownership of your home, it will not leave your heirs with debt, and it can provide you with lifetime monthly payments from the value of your home, or even a cash-out option. At United Faith Mortgage, our commitment is to clearly lay out all the details for you or your parents' specific case, and then only take on cases where it's clearly obvious to everyone involved that this is a no-lose situation. If you're curious what it would look like for you or someone you love, we are United Faith Mortgage.
Call for free information on reverse loans. United Mortgage Corp, Melville, New York. NMLS number 1330. Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities. Mortgage lender license 22672.
This is an important notice to consumers facing $10,000 or more in credit card debt, medical bills, or other unsecured debt. You may not be required to pay it all back because there are special programs now in effect that will significantly reduce the amount you will owe if you qualify. This is not bankruptcy or a debt consolidation loan. These programs, which the credit card companies like to keep secret, exist to aid American consumers struggling with overwhelming credit card debt by offering tremendous savings and real debt relief. Accredited Debt Relief has established a special hotline for you to call and learn what savings you qualify for. They've helped qualify consumers with over $1 billion in debt and are A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. So don't wait. Get the relief you need during these hard economic times. For this free information, call the Accredited Debt Relief Hotline now. Call 800-786-2300. 800-786-2300. That's 800-786-2300.
I think what excites them the most is that their children are happy.
Cara Bell, principal at Jubilee Christian School in Mount Lebanon.
When the children come into school, they love it. And oftentimes they're super excited when they leave because they don't want to leave. You know, it's always, bye, Mrs. Bell, see you tomorrow. I mean, they're just always happy. And I think that makes parents happy. You want to see your children have a passion for education. We want them to enjoy learning.
Imagine, believe, achieve. Jubilee Christian School, K through 8th grade. Now enrolling for the fall at jubileecs.org.
Discover the magnificence of the Mediterranean with Alistair Begg and our trusted partner, Inspiration Cruises and Tours. 9 life-changing days of powerful worship, Bible study, and history. Sign up now, deeperfaithcruise.com.
We are everywhere on your radio at 101.5 WORD FM Pittsburgh, at wordfm.com, the Word FM mobile app, iHeart, TuneIn, and Odyssey.
We'll see occasional rain and drizzle this evening. Otherwise, cloudy skies tonight with a low of 33. Variable clouds tomorrow. Tomorrow's high 47. Considerable cloudiness tomorrow night with a bit of rain late. The low 37. Increasingly windy Thursday with periods of rain. Temperatures approaching the record last reached in 2001. Will reach a high Thursday of 63. With your AccuWeather forecast, I'm Drew Shannon.
I grew up in Swissvale, and there's a little tiny church. I mean, a little tiny church. Maybe you could fit in 100 people. And I drove by there the other day, and I was with my buddy, and I was shocked because this church had a for sale sign in front of it. And I was like, can you believe that? He said, my buddy said, hey, that would make a nice coffee shop. And I said, it'd make a even better church. But that's where we are in America today. I mean, things have really receded. Mm-hmm. You know it in your neighborhoods. How many churches, Catholic churches, Baptist churches, Presbyterian churches are now B&Bs or private residences? It's just the era of the pullback of what it is to be a believer. Tim and Kathy Keller are with us. Tim wrote a piece that appeared in the Atlantic called American Christianity is Due for a Revival. And Tim, I mean, the story in that little church in my hometown illustrates, and I'm sure you see this in New York City as well, the churches have put a for sale sign up.
Yeah. I used an example at the very beginning of the article. That's why I think that's what you're referring to. When we first got here, there was an Episcopal church, beautiful Episcopal church, sort of downtown West 20th Street, I think. And it had been bought and turned into a sex club, basically, a sex and drugs club called the Limelight. And, I mean, I hadn't really seen that because we're talking about 1989, and we'd come up from Virginia through Philadelphia. But what we saw was in Virginia, the church was still growing, and they were still building churches. When I got to Philadelphia, I could see that things were different in the Northeast. It was already, I felt like the Christianity was already at least not seen as positively. And then when we got to Manhattan, Christianity was they were the bad guys. Christians were the bad guys. And there was very few people going to church, and the churches were being turned into sex clubs and condominiums and everything. And now, though, I think more and more, I'm afraid we are seeing that in the rest of the country, too. I think it happened in a place like New York first. Then it happened in smaller cities like Pittsburgh. Then it started happening everywhere. So it's not great. Nope.
So we have a varied audience to our show here, Tim and Kath. We have people who are believers. We also have people who aren't believers, who are from the Pittsburgh community or tri-state area. And I'm sure a lot of them who would not call themselves believers would say, well, I don't know if that's a bad thing. I mean, I don't know if it's that tragic of a thing that Christianity has less and less of an influence because you guys haven't done, such a great job running things for, a long time. So if that person comes to you and says, so why would it be a good idea, Tim Keller, for the church to be reinvigorated in society, what would you say?
That's a little hard to what I'm about to say sounds so counterintuitive to most people today that what seems more obvious is the scandals, in the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church and all the corruption. What people don't recognize is the very idea of equal rights for all human beings is a Christian idea. It's a biblical idea. It grew up in the West. The idea that we should take care of all the poor, not just our own poor, but all poor people, is a Christian idea. It comes from the idea that all human beings are in the image of God. Didn't grow out of Asia. Didn't come out of India or Africa or other places. It came out of Christianity. And to a great degree, we are extraordinarily indebted to the church at that high level. Secondly, I know Jonathan Haidt, who's an atheist. He's a social psychologist, a Jewish guy, not a good friend, but I know him and I love him. He's just a really smart, wonderful guy. And he says, basically, you're never going to have a really cohesive society without strong religious bodies. Because he says you can't have a society unless you believe that your morality is rooted in something sacred, something bigger than yourself. It's not just something we're making up out of our heads. And he said, actually, secular people don't really have that. Religion has that, and therefore it kind of creates an anchor. And then, of course, maybe I mentioned this. Here's the last thing. I mentioned this is the easiest one for people to get. But 20 years ago, University of Pennsylvania did a study to figure out, in general, how much money local churches were basically pouring into their neighborhoods in the Philadelphia area, and how much it would cost the government if all the churches disappeared tomorrow, how much it would cost them to replace those services. And this was 2001, and they figured just inside the city limits of Philadelphia, it would be $250 million a year. Now, that's, now, and yet, here's the thing. Christians do not believe that that Christianity is true because it serves society. We believe it can serve society because it's true. So you put all that together, if I had a little more time, I think I could make that sound a little more coherent.
Can I jump in with one comment here?
Yeah.
Some of the people who are saying, I'm not really so sad to see the back of Christianity, they can, disappear off the face of the earth, and that's fine with me. If they're talking about Christendom, I would agree. Christendom, it was not Christianity. It was sort of the civil religion, where you put the Ten Commandments outside the courthouse, and you had all of these societal markers of, Christianity being the top dog in the social order, and everybody else had to sort of keep quiet and celebrate Hanukkah or whatever else they wanted to on the down low. But Christianity, if they have a revival, that's a whole different thing. That's not a return to Christendom, where we rule as the power from the top down. It's a return to what Jesus talked about: is we serve from the bottom up. We take up the posture of we are people who've been saved by the gospel, and now we can be servants of our neighbors rather than grab the power and force them to do what we think is the right
I know our
thing.
time's limited, but just to give you a real quick example, Peter Drucker, who's gone now, he was a business guru. When he moved from Europe to New Jersey in 1932 or something like that, and he was trying to buy a house, they said, "Where do you go to church?" The bank said, "Where do you go to church?"
Really?
Wow.
And he said, "I don't know that. Why are you asking that?" And he said, "Well, why would we give a mortgage to somebody who doesn't go to church? How would we trust you?"
Wow.
Okay, that's Christendom. That's what Kathy's talking about. I'm not sure that's good. Frankly, it feels to me that's just prejudice.
Yeah.
At that point, to say, "Oh, you're not going to get a mortgage," if you're Jewish or if you're an atheist, that's not fair. Right. So that isn't something we should care about as much. But on the other hand, I don't think people realize what would be lost if the church really dies.
Yeah. And Kath, okay, so here you are, Kath. You grew up in the eastern suburbs here in the city of Pittsburgh. And, of course, you grew up here. You saw, and I'm sure, Tim, you saw, Kath, your hometown church, your neighborhood church, and the work that they did. It was evident to you, even as a young child, things were being done. People were coming here. You were part of the fabric of the community.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. When I told my mother, this is Christendom again, that I had become a Christian, I was in my teens, she said to me, "You've always been a Christian. You were born in America."
Yeah.
I said, "Mom, not exactly how it works."
Yeah. And there is a difference, right?
No, it's a good distinction between Christendom and Christianity.
Yeah.
But here's the problem, though. For the person I'm talking about who's listening to the program right now, there is no difference to them. They don't recognize that there's a distinction.
If you're not a believer?
Between Christendom and, a Jesus-following Christianity.
Right.
Well, I tried to say something about that at the end of the article, where I said, Christianity, the gospel, Christianity is not moralism. And I think most people do think that's what it is, just what you're saying. Moralism is where you are kind of harsh. You come down on people. You tell them you have to live like this, this, this. You have to live like me. And there's a self-righteousness. And you see, that self-righteousness is what people utterly hate.
Yeah.
And yet the actual gospel is that you are a sinner saved by sheer grace. That yes, if
just
you
like me.
experience the grace of God in your life, you will obey God. You will follow. You won't kill. You won't steal. You won't lie. In other words, of course you'll be a moral person, but your motivation is not moralism, which is saying, "Look how great I am. I'm following all the rules."
Yeah.
What you're doing is, once you realize you're saved strictly by God's grace because Jesus died for you, it creates a desire, an eager desire, to unself-righteously want to love God and love your neighbor, as a way of just saying, "Thank you for the grace that you've given me, and I want to give back. I want to give back to you. I want to give back to my neighborhood." So it's really not the moralism, and you're absolutely right. Most people don't see any difference in Christianity and moralism.
So then, if there is a revival, and Tim, in the piece, in the Atlantic piece, you make a strong case that a revival is coming. Is a lot of that hinged upon the decline of the established, sort of waspish church that we all grew up in, and a new church that hinges on a rise of immigrants who bring their faith to this country?
Part of it is that. What we're seeing is, and it's very interesting, Christianity is growing by leaps and bounds in Latin America, Africa, China, and other places in the world. But there are other places in the world where the population is growing too, unlike us. And so what always happens is the places where the population is growing faster tend to immigrate to places where where the population is not growing as fast. And so what's going to happen over the next 50 years is so many people are going to be moving to the United States from those parts of the world that are more more Christian, and they're going to be bringing their missionaries with them. My guess is Koreans, listen, I do know this, in 1992, Koreans and Chinese people in New York City had already planted 300 new churches.
Wow.
300 by 1992, over a 20-year period. Africans had planted 110. Now, I haven't been keeping up, but my guess is those numbers have at least doubled.
Wow.
And that's just New York. But that's going to start happening. And, of course, the kids are going to grow up, and we're going to all get married. And so increasingly there will be strong, growing, multi-ethnic churches in this country, and that's exactly right, John.
So, when I hear that, it's thrilling to me. I think because John and I have been so fortunate to be able to travel around the world and meet people who believe in Jesus from different tribes and cultures, and there's just absolutely nothing like it. It truly is truly is a foretaste of the kingdom. I understand though that there are probably a lot of people listening to the program who look at that with a little bit of trepidation, and they think, well, I don't want America to become South Korea. Or I don't, and so the ideas of immigration in a geopolitical sense get a little mashed up with thinking that the church is multicultural.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what. You're right. First of all,
Tim? Can I interrupt you and say my line? If people do not enjoy multicultural churches, they're not going to enjoy heaven very much.
Yeah.
Seriously, every kingdom, tribe, people, nation.
Right.
Are going to be there. And if you're not ready for that, you're not going to enjoy heaven very much.
So down here, I was just going to say, within the church, it's seasoning. It's not a totally new church because what ends up happening is that when Korean Americans come into the church, they bring something from their Korean Christianity. And the result in the end, though, is not Korean Christianity. It's I guess you could say it's more global Christianity. Mm-hmm. And you learn. I mean, when I first started having Asian staff members on my church staff at Redeemer, they started telling me things that I could be doing a lot differently because in Korean churches they do it this way. And like one time out of two, I would say, no, I'm not going to do it that way. I don't think that's a good way. But another one time out of two, I would say, that's better. Mm. That is a better way of doing it. And I was learning from my multi-ethnic staff. And Redeemer became a much stronger church, but recognizably an American church. Mm-hmm. So you ought to see it more like seasoning. When it comes to the geopolitical stuff, the political stuff, I don't think I better talk about that right here. But I do think in the end that it doesn't mean the overthrow of America.
Right.
It just does not. People are still coming into American institutions, and I believe that the American institutions will be seasoned by all these immigrants, just the way my church was, and it'd still be a recognizable American church.
I agree, yeah. And so whether we like it or not, and despite our gnashing of teeth and fear of a changing country, this country always changes, that we will still, in many ways, still be Christian, right? I mean, Christian, whether it's Korean Christian or whomever, Christ will still be here in the United States of America.
Yeah, and that's what should matter.
Absolutely.
Right, and here's the thing. I think the closer we become, the more that we progress down the road of sanctification, each one of us, right? We're going to start to prize the things that God loves and not the things that we hold on to so tightly. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't love America, because I love America, and I hope that the South Korean Christians love their, you know what I mean? I don't think there's anything wrong with patriotism, but there is something about our hearts that become more like him the more we know him. And so if he loves the multi-ethnic church, I really believe that our hearts are going to be drawn into that too.
I totally agree. And it's also true, by the way, that every person, when you become a Christian, you're changed a bit from the non-Christian culture around you, whatever it is. So I do know, for example, America is extraordinarily individualistic. Like, I can do my own truth, and I can define myself.
Right.
Well, American churches are relatively individualistic compared to Korean churches. Yeah. On the other hand, we've been changed by the Bible. The Bible doesn't let us go all the way in that direction. Actually, Korean churches, and I'm saying this because I know them, tend to be authoritarian a little bit more because Korean culture is authoritarian. But Christianity, it modifies that. Christianity keeps the authoritarianism of some cultures, and it moderates it inside the church, just like it's moderated individualism inside the American church. We ought to be very happy for the fact that God is bringing us together across these racial barriers and just letting us be. I mean, when I become a Christian, I'm not a Chinese Christian, I'm an American Christian, but I'm also different. I'm letting the gospel critique my Americanness in some ways, and it makes me, I think, a better American, but certainly a great Christian, too.
Amen.
Well, that's a good word.
Tim and Kathy Keller. Tim's new book, Forgive. Why should I? How can I? We're going to let you guys go. But wait, before we do, though, Super Bowl's coming up. Kath, Tim, do you have any interest?
The Steelers aren't playing. Who cares?
Yeah. No, wait a minute.
Tim, this is where Tim's going to have his best moment.
By the way, I was really encouraged by the latter part of the Steelers season, not the first part.
Yes, we were too.
Kind of exciting. Yeah, right. And there's some young players there that I really hope will be good. But you might want to keep in mind, I was raised in Eastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I know. This is what you've been waiting for.
Flatter, and the Eagles are there.
Yeah.
Eagles are in Eastern Pennsylvania. So sorry, I have a favorite.
No,
okay,
fabulous.
so for your Super Bowl party, though, you have to have clear liquid only.
Don't remind me.
Okay, what? So I need to send like chicken soup.
Wings and clear liquid wings really are not appetizing.
Oh, that's super sad. Okay, well, whenever you're feeling better, Tim, we'll send you something like really terrible, like wings and
kielbasa.
Yeah. Oh, sauerkraut and kielbasa. I have made a believer out of Tim.
Oh, excellent.
That's one of his favorite things.
All right, hey, we're praying for both of you guys.
Yeah. Always a pleasure, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate
That's
it.
Tim and Kathy Keller. Tim's latest book is called Forgive. Why should I? How can I?
All right. At least one side of the family is saying go Eagles. The other, of course, Super Yinzer, Steeler forever.